I welcome you to the next lesson we have today, a very, very important lesson when we are discussing about the group by statement or the group by clause. Now, we are considering the having clause. From our previous lesson, we talked about the group by, and we saw that we can possibly apply the where keyword to our query to query out our data. But you notice that if we happen to apply the where keyword on aggregate function, we'll be getting error. I don't know if you've tried that before. If you have not, you can decide to do it. All right. So the having clause was added to SQL because the where keyword cannot be used with aggregate function. Recall that in our previous lesson, we were able to use the select keyword to filter out the information or data from our database where we selected some columns, including aggregating data on a certain amount column, right? We selected our categorical column, which was the customer ID. We also saw the staff ID, and then we included an aggregate function. We added an aggregate function to a column that is the amount column. And then we began to write some other queries to filter out data from that information, which we got a result, right? And then also, when we talk about the having clause, this is the format of the having clause. First of all, we select our columns. These are columns. Remember, when we are selecting the columns, we need to have our categorical columns included. All right. And we can see here columns. We can select in a single column or select multiple categorical column, including your aggregate column, to say from the table name. Now, where the condition, the first condition here, we can only apply this condition to our categorical column selected already. We cannot apply this condition to our aggregate column, all right, aggregate function. Now, before we head over to see our group by, and we said that the group by can be used after either the where clause, that is if you are to filter a condition, or to use directly after the from statement. And then we have the having condition. Now, this having condition is filtering based off of the category, to say the aggregate function, to say. And then we need to order by. Thereafter, we can also include the limit here. Now, let's get to our PG admin to practice what we've seen so far. Now, if you come to our PG admin here, we will be, let's get to our payment table as we used initially. So we are selecting the whole columns from our payments. Now, when you run this query, we have a customer ID, staff ID, rental rate, rental ID, amount, payment date. And then initially we said that we can find our categorical column if we can apply distinct keyword or find the unique keyword or unique values on that column. And so your customer ID is a categorical data, and then the staff ID also is a categorical data, say. But we'll be using our customer ID. So let's select our customer ID. We are selecting a single column. And then remember to also add your aggregate function, and we are adding it to the amount column. Now, if you execute this query, we need to remember we also need to group by our customer ID. Now, if you happen to execute this query, I think there's a mistake somewhere. Some of the amount, there's a mistake in the amount here, amount. Now, if you execute this query, this is what you'll be getting. The customer ID, and then the summation for each of the groups, the categories we have here. These are the summation of the values here. And then we can decide to, you'll notice that if we apply a where condition, let's say where the summation of the amount, we want to only filter out where the sum of the amount is greater than 100. Notice if you run this query, you'll be getting an error. This is because you cannot apply the where condition here to our aggregate function. So because of this, SQL added to add the having clause. All right. Now, if you add the having clause here, and then you copy this same condition, let's cut it off and come over here and paste it now. Remove this line. All right. Now, if you execute this query, we are going to get our result where the sum of the amounts here is always greater than 100. And we said initially that you can only apply this where condition to our column here. So where customer ID, if you only want to sort or filter out where we have the customer IDs, that is the group of customer IDs here. Remember, this is already categorized, all right? And this is their different ID. And you want to find, only want to get the summation of the amount whose customer ID is above, let's say, 200. Now, if you execute this query, this is what you are going to be getting. You can further order this, use the order by. Let's order by the customer ID. All right. So run this query. So we are ordering in the ascending order here. We can see all our values are greater than 100. All right, greater than 200 to say our customer ID is greater than 200, and all the summation of the amount here, they are greater than 100. So this is basically how to use the having clause when working with the group by statement. So thank you so much for joining me once again. And I'll be putting down challenges, questions, which you need to go through. And there's already a question assessment session which has been provided for the group by clause to say. Now, you need to, if you haven't done that exercise or the assignment, to say, just get over to it, then use your your pgadmin, write the queries, then copy it down, paste it in the answer section, and then you submit this. I will be providing with assessment on the having clause. These are all business related questions, and I believe that giving you these questions on real life projects will help you to better understand the use of these technical keywords when it comes to applying it in real life. So thank you so much once again, and I'm expecting to see you in our next section.